Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtuki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, one should first offer one's respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishis, the supermost human beings, unto the Goddess of Learning, Mother Saraswati, and unto the author Srila Vyasadeva. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart becomes almost completely destroyed, and devotional service to the Supreme Lord becomes established within one's heart as an irrevocable fact. Good morning, devotees. Thank you for all joining us here in person, as well as those joining us online. It's great to see you all. We're continuing our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, chapter 5, text 31 and 32 today. Both of these verses only have 2 lines each. This is kind of rare. Usually we have 4 lines, but both of these have 2 lines each. Taijashan indriyani eva Jnana karma mayani cha Taijashan indriyani eva Jnana karma mayani cha Taijashan indriyani eva Jnana karma mayani cha. Like the check? Taijashanindriyani eva Jnana karma mayani cha. Taijashanindriyani eva Jnana karma mayani cha. Taijashanindriyani eva Jnana karma mayani cha. Anyone else? It goes very quickly when it's only 2 lines. Taijashanindriyani eva Jnana karma mayani cha. So there's another one. We'll let the people online, the devotees online, chant the second verse. Synonyms: Taijasani, the mode of passion. Indriyani, the senses. Eva, certainly. Jnana, knowledge, philosophical speculations. Karma, fruit of activities. Mayani, predominating. Cha, also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The senses are certainly products of the mode of passion in false ego, and therefore philosophical speculative knowledge and fruit of activities are predominantly products of the mode of passion. Purport. This is a really good purport. The chief function of the false ego is godlessness. When a person forgets his constitutional position as an eternally subordinate, part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and wants to be happy independently, he functions mainly in 2 ways. he first attempts to act fruitively for personal gain or sense gratification. And after attempting such fruitive activities for a considerable time, when he is frustrated, he becomes a philosophical speculator and thinks himself to be on the same level as God. This false idea of becoming one with the Lord is the last snare of the illusory energy, which traps a living entity into the bondage of forgetfulness under the spell of false ego. The best means of liberation from the clutches of false ego is to give up the habit of philosophical speculation regarding the absolute truth. One should know definitely that the absolute truth is never realized by the philosophical speculations of the imperfect, egoistic person. The absolute truth, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is realized by hearing about him in all submission and love from a bona fide authority who is a representative of the 12 great authorities mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. By such an attempt, one can conquer the illusory energy of the Lord, although for others she is insurpassable, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7:14. We'll chant that verse really quickly. We can say it all together. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam taranti te. This divine energy of mine is consisting of the three modes of material nature. It's difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. We'll go to the next verse and then come back and speak about both of them. Text 32. Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir yata kam lingam atmana tamaso bhuta sushmadir yata kam lingam atmana tamaso bhuta sukshmadir yata kam lingam atmana. Devotees on tamaso bhuta sukshmadir yata kam lingam atmana. Let's see if the devotees online. We'll give them a chance to chant this one, since we did two.
Hare Krishna. Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir
Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir
yatah kham linga atmanah
yata kam lingam atmana.
Tamaso bhuta sukshmadhir
Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir
yata kam lingamatmana.
yata kam lingam atmana.
Hare Krishna. Tamso bhutu shushmadir
Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir
yata kam lingam atmana.
to kam lingam atmana.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so we'll do synonyms. Tamasa, from the mode of ignorance. Bhuta sukshmadi, subtle sense objects. Yata, from which? Kam, the sky. Lingam, symbolic representation. Atmana, the super soul. Translation. This is a little bit more abstract than the previous verse. The sky is a product of sound, and sound is the transformation of egotistic ignorance. In other words, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. That's a hard one to wrap our head around. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport. In the Vedic hymns, it is stated, Etasmad Atmana Akshaha Sambhuta. The sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Those who are egotistic in passion and ignorance cannot conceive of the personality of Godhead. For them, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Om Agyanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tanya Mano Bishtam Swapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We'll start with this last verse. I'll say a few comments on this without Srila Prabhupada's purport on this. It would be very hard to understand what this actually means. But one who is in ignorance and cannot perceive God, the personality of Godhead, seeing the sky and the vastness of the sky, the all-pervasiveness of the sky, the fact that it is everywhere. Everywhere you look, you can't see beyond the sky. That is the symbolic representation of the Supersoul. The quality and nature of the Supersoul is that it's present in everybody's heart. In every atom, every living being, its presence is made everywhere, just as the sky is present everywhere. I could relate to that idea. I remember before having a relationship with God, to recognize that my problems were actually really small. I would look up at the sky and just see the vastness of the sky, the stars in the sky. We'd read about in science how the planets and the stars were, even if we traveled in this lifetime, we would never even be able to reach them. They were that far away. And that there must be something going on out there. And, here we are, just little beings, with a problem because we got a B on a test, or, we had a relationship that failed, or, you didn't do so good in your soccer game or something like that. Did it really matter? Just the vastness of the sky gave a presence of grounding and understanding. Some spiritual concept was there. So this sky representing the all-pervasiveness that is present in the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Super Soul. Let me read the translation to the first verse again, text 31. The senses are certainly products of the mode of passion in false ego, and therefore philosophical speculative knowledge and fruitive activities are predominantly products of the mode of passion. Let's get that for a second. So we're learning about the false ego, and false ego we find spoken about a lot in the Bhagavad Gita, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's important for us to understand what it is and how it is actually the misrepresentation of who we really are. It is actually our greatest enemy. As Srila Prabhupada starts in our of the purport, he says the chief function of the false ego is godlessness. And our constitutional nature is that we are servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in order to forget that we are the supreme servants of the Supreme Personality, we have to undergo a different identity, a false identity. That false identity is called the false ego. Because the false ego is a product of the modes of material nature. It is not spiritual. It is of the inferior material energy. It's Krishna's inferior energy. Krishna has created this false ego. Because it's under the modes of, under material nature, it is conditioned by the modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And in this particular verse, it talks about how the senses are products of the mode of passion in false ego. And if we take a second to think about that, the senses being equated with the mode of passion. Senses are used for acquiring knowledge and acting on this world for the purpose of gratification. The senses are broken into two categories: acting senses on the world and knowledge acquiring senses, karmendriya and gyanendriya. So our senses in which we acquire knowledge from, they are our eyes, our nose, our ears, our tongue, and our skin. So that's how information enters into our body, by which we can then perceive it by the mind. And then there are the acting senses that act on this world, and that are our hands, our feet, our tongue for speaking. That's how we give things out into the world, as well as our genitals and the anus. That's how that's defined in the Vedas as the Gyanendriya and Karmendriya. But the purpose of them all is to generate some level of gratification for this body. And that sense of gratification is predominated by the mode of passion. The mode of passion, in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, I'll read a few things about this, which will define the mode of passion and see how the senses are tied into it. The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. And because of this, the embodied living being is bound to material fruit of actions. So in the mode of passion, in order to get gratified, one has to make some endeavor and act on the world. And this usually comes in the form of effort. Effort is characterized by the mode of passion. You have to create something, you have to create a situation, you have to earn something, you have to attract something. And then once you do that, you actually become entangled in the network of fruitive action. From acting on this world, you get a reaction, and then you are forced to receive that reaction. That is the law of karma. When there's an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. So passion is also represented by the sense of greed. I want it, and then once you get some, then you want to take on more. We're never truly satisfied. The Bhagavad Gita explains this, that it's like pouring fuel onto the fire. The fire is never satisfied, but whatever amount of fuel you put into it, it can continue to burn. In fact, the fire needs to be extinguished. But in the mode of passion, there's no thought about extinguishing the fire. It's just about how do you continue to feed it more and more. That feeding of the fire is through continued acts of endeavor, intense endeavor, which then develops deeper and deeper sense of attachment into this material world. Once we get into that attachment, we're stuck, because that attachment grows and it latches on, and then continues to latch on to the material objects of this world. When one dies in the mode of passion, where does he take birth? Not in the mode of goodness, a person takes birth in the heavenly planets. But when one dies in the mode of ignorance, or in the mode of passion, he takes birth in the earthly planets among those who are engaged in fruitive activities. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that this world is categorized, the advancement, the standard of living is categorized by one's or society's ability to act in the mode of passion. When we hear about the previous times, the mode of goodness was the standard of living. And if one was living in the mode of goodness, you were considered to have a good life. Live in peacefulness, tranquility, simplicity, relying on nature. Now it's, how many cars do you have? How big is your house? How big is your bank balance? How much do you own? How much do you acquire? Your status in society. That is considered to be the symbol, the symbol of success. So this mode of passion is the representation of the senses that act in this world, and our senses are in Krishna consciousness. When we learn about this, controlling the senses through the practice of bhakti, devotional service, is what is taught from the very beginning. Using our bodies to serve the Lord, using our tongues to chant the Lord's name, to taste Krishna prasadam, to use our ears to hear, also using our tongues to speak about Krishna, to learn about Krishna. Use our eyes to see the deities, use our body to engage in some type of practical service, whether it's giving the message of Krishna to others, or whether it's or engaging in devotional service to the deities in some practical way. To transform our bodies, because we have bodies, we can't ignore the fact that we have bodies. We can't just wake up and say, I'm going to pretend I'm not our body. That doesn't exist. That is not an option for us. We have to act within the body, but not on the platform of the body. I thought the doors were about to open. Now, philosophical speculation. One would think this may actually be on the level of goodness, but it's characterized here as being in the mode of passion. Acting in the senses, acting in this world, sense gratification, acquiring as much as we can, intense attachment, we can understand that that is the mode of passion and will ultimately bring us down. But philosophical speculation, one would think, well, okay, that seems to be a little bit higher. That involves the mind. That involves questioning, the purpose of life. So why would that be categorized as the mode of passion? In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains the process of one going from acting on the level of the senses to going to the level of the mind. That when one becomes frustrated in this world through endeavor for economic development and sense gratification, eventually they will become frustrated. By pouring more and more fuel into the fire and not being satisfied due to loss, grief that one gains in this world. will begin a person to start questioning, is it all really worth it? No matter how hard I strive and try, there's certain problems of life which you're not able to overcome. Death, disease, old age. And they're all coming if they haven't already come. And they can hit us at any time. And when we lose loved ones, we lose colleagues, we see tragedy appear, even if it's on the news. Eventually, sometime it clicks in and says, maybe I should stop and think about really what's important in life. Is this going to actually happen to me? Is this going to happen to my family? Maybe all that I'm investing in this world, I should be rethinking, and seeing what is it that actually can, is there another way? So one comes to this process of philosophical speculation. But it's selfish. It's not through necessarily spiritual knowledge. And that spiritual knowledge is defined as coming through a descending process. Srila Prabhupada says it should come in the line of the 12 Mahajans. In other words, it should come through parampara. If one wants to understand and get to the point of escaping these modes of material nature, it won't be through philosophical speculation. One can get to the point of understanding, okay, there's a separation between my body, my place in this world, and God. There has to be a creator. I have a material body that's going to die. God's eternal, must be made of a different substance. One can come into an understanding of this, but to actually return to our constitutional position as an eternal servant of God, one has to hear about this in the line of disciplic succession. It has to be given to us. There's a verse in the Shishi Gornitai ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Shishi Radha Sharad Bihari ki jai. A verse spoken by Maharaj Yudhisthira, which is also Lord Chaitanya quotes it in the Madhya Lila, 17th chapter, 186, that dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered to be a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of the unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, all the Shastras confirm one should accept the progressive path of that the Mahajans advocate. So those whose attachments are not in this world, who have transcended this material world, who have come from the spiritual world, the path that they have laid out, that will be the path that will show us to our original constitutional nature. If we think through our minds, that we will be able to speculate and try to understand the nature of this world and how to get out of it. According to Krishna, according to his devotees, that is not possible. It is only through the mercy of the spiritual master and his representatives that one will actually attain such understanding. And that is why this endeavor to understand through philosophical speculation is considered to be in the mode of passion. When that is coupled with this idea that actually I am God, that concept of being I am God is a representation of the false ego. because there's only Krishna that exists. I cannot become God. But in my endeavor to still want to be independent from God, to be insubordinate to God, not to recognize my dependency, not to recognize my subordinacy. One still is denying the position of God, although they want to escape the challenges of this world. That is the mode of passion. So, to overcome this mode of passion, we can do some things. Mode of passion is characterized by we want the results and we want the results right away. We act on impulse. We act on desire, what will satisfy us. The mode of goodness is characterized by restraint of the senses, not acting on impulse. So we should be able to identify when the mode of passion hits us. I deal with it every day. I imagine everybody else deals with it every day. We're put in situations where we feel we need to respond immediately because our minds are agitated. We have this demand that comes from this impulse within our mind that says we have to respond and we gotta say it. And sometimes this gets us in trouble. Either we make decisions that are not fully thought through, or we say things that could be very hurtful, that we really didn't mean to say or want to say, but in that moment, we were caught in the mode of passion. And that's what it is. It's the mode of passion. So one way to address that is, one, to recognize it, to learn about it, to continue to hear about it. And then also to take a pause. Process it in your mind. Talk to a friend or a confidant that can be able to tell you that, hey, they don't want to tell you that, hey, take a moment. Don't act on this today. Give yourself a break. Think about it and act tomorrow. What you don't want is the person to say, yes, you got to do it right now. Let them know what you're thinking. You're in the right position. Go ahead and do it. Take a moment, take a step back. Reflect. Sleep on it. Chant some rounds, do some service. Read some Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. And then see if you still have that same perspective. Abraham Lincoln, he was a president of the United States, one of the most famous presidents during the Civil War. He was known after he died, and they went through all his files. They found countless letters that he had never sent. And these were some of the most harsh written letters. So you could tell that in the moment when he heard certain news that people disappointed him, that he wanted certain things done that weren't done, he would write out all his thoughts. And when people read them, they said, wow, this is really bad stuff that he wrote to people. But he kept them in a drawer, but he never sent them. And then when they found, when they would talk to some of the people that he actually did, they said, no, he sent me something that was completely different. But that was his initial thought. And that is the mode of passion. So to think that the mode of passion is just not going to happen to us, depending on our conditioned state, may be unrealistic. We're still going to get a little bit of it. Now, hopefully, as we advance in Krishna consciousness, that mode of passion begins to dwindle more and more. That's a sign of one's advancement. But we're still going to experience it, and we have to be able to deal with it. And this is one practical way that we can see that we can deal with it. Now, the false ego, that is something else we have to deal with. We have to also recognize when the false ego is present. And for the most part, it's present almost all the time in our lives. I remember Rarinda Shuprabhu, it was a long time ago, but sometimes there's these statements that just stick in your head. And I remember him saying that the false ego, we spend all our lives defending our false ego. And it is our enemy. It is the most, I think he used the word useless, but it's the most, let's use that, most useless thing that we actually have. Because it is actually not helping us in our eternal purpose. It is actually hindering us. But we spend our whole defending it. So this too we have to be conscious of. Not just, when the mode of passion hits us, we have to be conscious of it. When the mode of ignorance happens, we should be conscious of these things. But we should also be constantly aware of when the false ego is making us act, when we're identifying with the false ego. And one way to do this is through prayer. Prayers that come in the form of reminding us who we really are, what our eternal nature is. There's a prayer from the Shashastakam that Lord Chaitanya gave us. Ayi nandana tanuja kinkaram, patita mam vishwame bhavam varo, kripaya tava para pankaja, shtita doli sarisham vachintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. This is actually a really sweet prayer when you think it through. It's simple, but I'm your eternal servitor. Reminding ourselves, Krishna, I'm your eternal servitor. I've fallen into this ocean of birth and death. This is an unnatural place for me. And I've fallen from this. I am to blame. I can take some accountability for it. I've decided to live separately from you. Now I'm asking you, please pick me up and just put me at your lotus feet in your eternal service. Lord Chaitanya also gives us another sweet verse. And it says that I am not a Brahmana. I am not a Kshatriya. I am not a Vaishya. I'm not a Sudra. I'm not a brahmachari, a grihasta, a vanaprastha, or sannyas. Who am I? I identify myself only as a servant to the servant to the servant, the lotus feet of the Lord and Lord of Lord Sri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. That's who we are, and that's who we can always only be in our eternal identity. Anything else is a representation of the false ego. So when we chant these things, say these prayers throughout our day, in the beginning, middle, and end of our day, it reminds us as we act and integrate into the world that we don't have to lose our identity. Remind ourselves over and over again, this is who I am. When we chant the holy names, when we chant the names, we chant these names in the mood of I am your servant, and I'm asking you for service. I'm asking you to deliver me from this ocean of material birth and death, repeated birth and death. It actually has a lot more meaning. It relates to us. This doesn't come in one ear and go out the other. It actually digests inside of us. We process it. We're asking Krishna for service. So we should have the mentality that I am your servant, your eternal servant, and this is my condition. So these are some ways that we can help identify as well as relate and transform that false ego into our real identity. I'll stop now. Thank you for your attention, and we can have some discussion or questions. First, we'll see anybody in person who'd like to share anything or ask anything. Hare Krishna, Bhakti.
So much for class. There are so many interesting points, but I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit about, I'm searching in my own heart and thinking about the mode of passion, even within offering devotional service. If that's a thing, if that's a risk. For example, like thinking of our chanting as a task that has to get done, like not meaning to get caught up in that, but starting to feel like, okay, I gotta chant these 60 months, I gotta get done. Is that, can you offer devotional service in the mode of passion and sort of lose your, your heart or your devotional intention? Or is that different? Does it only apply to material tasks?
Yeah. So when devotional service is not pure, it too can also be indifferent, and it's impure. So what does it mean if it's impure? What is impure devotional service? It means that it still has these tinges or alloys of the modes of nature. Motivation. It's motivated devotional service as an unmotivated devotional service. So the motivations that are there can also be categorized as goodness, passion, and ignorance. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Hanuman in the mode as one who uses the mode of passion in devotional service. So he fought for Lord Ram. He burned down the city of Lanka in order to save Sita. And, in response to Ravana's, actions. At the same time, I've seen people who have a predominantly passionate nature feel like they can just settle into doing devotional service in the mode of passion and get kind of stuck there. I'm just a passionate person. That's who I am. That's my nature. So I'm just going to blow you out and just, like I'm going to yell it, but don't worry. I'm just a passionate person. And like that's kind of acceptable. Well, that may be there, but we should recognize, well, that's still a condition. That's still a part of our conditioned nature, and we should work on those things. We shouldn't want to be stuck or complacent in these modes of nature that we may find ourselves in. We want to ultimately be able to transcend these modes. The process of transcending these modes is the process of devotional service. Krishna will actually release us from these modes of nature. We won't actually be able to overcome them ourselves. An example of these modes of nature are like ropes that bind us. They're gunas. Gunas are ropes. But yet we're tied. Those ropes have to be cut externally. Sometimes these modes of nature are also compared to that of like if you ever seen this or experienced this, like you're walking in the park and there's like dogs running around, and all of a sudden like a dog will just like start charging you, and you're like, I'm not going to outrun this dog. What am I going to do? And then like you're like, you're at the dog's mercy, and then all of a sudden the dog's master will just blow his whistle and make a noise. And all of a sudden the dog will just like stop and like run away. Right? So that's Krishna, say, okay, modes of material nature, pull away from this person. Krishna will actually, pull off those modes of way when we have shown our sincerity in wanting to transcend them. Krishna, I don't want to be like this anymore. And then we can start entering into Sudasattva, pure goodness. It's going to take some time. It's going to take the help, of our divine, authorities. But that should be our intention. That should be our direction that we're going for. So when we find ourselves in the mode of passion and devotional service, it can truly be the mode of passion, where we're feeling very passionate. But even in our pure state, a person can be appearing to be acting in the mode of passion, meaning that they're going to build something or acquire something or do something, but really they're completely detached from everything. But they're in the process of doing a service that is that has the qualities of doing of a person being in the mode of passion. So we want to get to that point. So just being able to see the distinction between the two, coming to the point of unmotivated devotional life. But even in our state where we have some passion in it, if we can utilize that in Krishna's service and ask Krishna to help purify our tendencies or our impurities, that's the way to go about it. Does that answer your question? Anything else?
You had talked about the devotional, or early on, you were mentioning about the speculative knowledge being in the mode of passion. So, can you remind me what the mode of goodness? I mean, it's devotional service is the mode of goodness, right? So, the speculative knowledge is mode of passion. Just one, it's a point of clarification.
Yeah,
just want to make sure getting that.
Yeah, so it was related to the quest to still deny God's existence, but to be released from the entanglements of this world. So to be able to try to do it on your own without the help of God and Krishna's representatives. You know, coming to the point of wanting to get free from the frustrations of this world, but not necessarily lose one's independence. Still kind of do it your way, do it our way. So it's like you want the benefit, but without going through the process, and that's lack of knowledge, because that actually doesn't exist. To become free from Krishna doesn't really exist. But I want to become free from Krishna, but I also want to become free from the bondage of this material world. So that's the process of this, of what's being described here is philosophical speculation. Is that?
It does, yeah. I think I was losing that point in the discussion, so I needed to recap. So thank you.
Yeah, because there is philosophical speculation. I don't have the reference for it right now, but it is talked about oftentimes in other contexts where mental speculation is kind of like frowned upon because you're just utilizing your mind to try to deliver you. But philosophical speculation, where you speak about a philosophical topic, you know, amongst devotees, and you kind of try to digest it and understand it, how to apply it, and what does this mean to us, this, you know, philosophical discussion and speculation, which is, you know, encouraged in the sense of, you know, speaking about these, you know, philosophical topics and the association of devotees and how to apply it. So how it's being spoken about here is more about this trying to figure out how to deliver oneself.
Do it without God.
Yeah. Because you're still resisting this idea that there is a God, and my relationship to him is that I'm subordinate to him. Yeah. Anybody online have any questions or thoughts before we conclude? All right, thank you all for your attention today, your attendance. We'll continue tomorrow morning. We also have at the Sunday feast, we have a guest speaker, His Grace Guru Sharan Prabhu. He's a brahmachari from Chowpatty Temple. He's currently residing in the Bhakti Center. He's a chaplain at NYU and serving there. So we're happy to have him join us tomorrow for our Sunday feast program. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Krishna conscious day. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.